The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the show. Before we get into it, I want to mention that we need to issue a correction. This does happen about once a year, Lewis, and it's disappointing it's happening so early this year, but that's okay. The other day, I misattributed a quote to Bill O'Reilly. I meant to attribute the quote to Joe Biden and discuss Bill O'Reilly's reaction to that quote when talking about, it was during the segment about Bill O'Reilly talking about Asians are usually hardworking. That wasn't the quote. It was one from a while back. Apologies. A mistake was made, and we apologize sincerely, Louis.
If you or any of your family members died as a consequence of this mistake, we sincerely apologize.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 5 mistakes that George W. Bush made in terms of policy that President Obama is continuing. There's a great article on Alternet. I encourage you to take a look at it, and it outlines 5 policies that President Bush started or exacerbated that President Obama has either continued or actually doubled down on. Number 1 is drones, which we've been talking about. We talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it more today, so I won't go more into it now. But that is a policy that, as progressives, we would like a Democratic president to stop, and President Obama has not stopped. Number 2, warrantless wiretapping. George W. Bush, of course, blowing up warrantless wiretapping after 9/11, President Obama continuing and increasing it in many cases, and basically making a lot of those Patriot Act provisions permanent, Lewis.
Yes.
Proxy detentions. The Obama administration continues to use foreign countries to detain and interrogate suspects. The details are changing a little bit from how it worked during George W. Bush, but the practice is basically still the same, which is you use other security forces to do a lot of dirty work. The most recent iterations of this that I've read about involve using countries like Nigeria and Djibouti to detain suspects that the U.S. wants to interrogate. The Post reported on one that happened about a year ago where a man from Eritrea revealed he had been questioned in a Nigerian jail by what a U.S. interrogator described as a, quote, dirty team of American agents who ignored the suspect's right to remain silent, the request for lawyers, so on and so forth. This is a problem. We need to, for all the good things President Obama is doing, this is not acceptable.
This is pretty bad. I agree.
4, Guantanamo. We know that Guantanamo not being closed is not President Obama's fault. Of course, the biggest mistake he may have made was being so explicit in saying he would close Guantanamo during his first term, which he was not able to do. It does symbolize a failure to reject that aspect of the Bush administration's approach to terrorism. I still consider it a problem, although I don't blame the fact that it's still open specifically on President Obama.
Right, but if you don't have the foresight to realize that you're not going to be able to keep your promise, come on.
Fair enough. And number 5, indefinite detention. This issue, I would say above all others, and the Alternate article agrees with me, is a loud and clear message that the Obama administration is essentially, I don't know if I want to use the term preparing or already bought into an endless war on terror. And when we talk about the drone stuff, which is, hey, in fact, the entire context of the defense of drone usage assumes and is informed by an endless, ongoing war on terror that knows no country boundaries, for sure.
You got it. Now, what if warrantless wiretapping meant that there were less incorrect proxy detentions and indefinite detentions?
It's an interesting hypothetical. Do we have any evidence that that is the case? No.
But we have no evidence of the contrary.
What if, to quote Alex Jones, chimpanzees dancing on the head of a pin reduces the number of civilian drone deaths, right? I mean, these are hypotheticals.
That's true.
Natan, what about the argument some people make, which is that President Obama is to some extent stuck with some of this policy from George W. Bush, and it's unfair to blame him for these things?
I mean, it is possible that if he had rescinded a lot of these orders and policies that he would then be attacked by the right, although I would argue that in the last election it probably wouldn't have come up as much just because the economy was the main issue. But I think that he probably thinks that these policies are good ones,
yeah,
and it's under the radar, and it's certainly something that's not being widely reported in the media. But I don't think it's something where, for a political reason, he hasn't gone back on them.
So basically, do you agree with that, Lewis, that if he wanted to pick a new direction here, he could, but that either there's no interest in it or the pressure from those who are other forces within political government wouldn't allow a change.
I think he is stuck with these because of Bush in a way. Would he have put these in place if Bush hadn't? I doubt it. But he's probably in a position where everyone who works for the U.S. government in terms of security is saying
it's assumed this is
these
the list.
Really need to stay in place.
This is the laundry list of what's done.
He probably hasn't even thought about it.